The Chinese community has been a part of Western Australia since the 1830s. There are over 100,000 West Australians of Chinese descent. For more than 150 years, Western Australia's Chinese communities have contributed significantly to every sphere of life in this state, be it through business activities, culture, education, sport, or many other areas.
Welcome to Chung Focus. I'm Lisa Hinchliffe. Today we will explore the past and present of the Chinese in Western Australia and their perseverance during what has at times been a challenging journey in a harsh and hostile environment. Despite every adversity faced as a migrant sector in WA, the Chinese people have made a vast and consistent contribution to this state. Minister for Mines and Petroleum, Energy and Corrective Services, the Honourable Bill Johnston, acknowledges their resilience and input.
Chinese people have made an incredible contribution to Australia over the last 190 years. They've come to Australia, they've worked hard, they've raised families, they've made the most of their life. And it's sad that Chinese people were subject to much racism in the past, but the good news now is we are a genuinely multicultural society, and we're very welcoming of Chinese Australians, and we really appreciate the contribution they're making to our society.
Chinese history in WA dates back to October 1829, with the arrival of migrants from all over the world to the newly claimed colony, now known as Fremantle. Among the first arrivals was Moon Chow from China, aboard the Emily Taylor. For third-generation Australian-born Chinese, Kaylene Poon, the story of Moon Chow is an important one.
He settled in Fremantle, and being a carpenter, his skills were highly valued. When Moon Chow died in 1877, he was quite elderly, and his death actually caused quite a catalyst for change in Fremantle. He was attempting to cross the road, and it was early evening, and he was hit by a speeding postal van. And as a result of his death, Fremantle introduced speed limits for vehicles. And for that to happen for a Chinese is quite interesting, because generally the Chinese were not held in high esteem.
Moon Chow was an exception. For the majority of our early migrant Chinese, the vilification and humiliation they endured was shocking, and is an element of Australian history that should never be forgotten. While there was some retaliatory unrest, for the most part, peace prevailed. This can be attributed to their humility, hard work, deep respect for family, culture, and their new country. These attributes are why many Chinese people have become pillars of Australian society. People like Louis Wah, the first president of the Chung Association.
My great-great-grandfather, Louis Wah, worked in the Victorian goldfields, not as a miner, but as a merchant. Apparently he was quite a well-known person amongst the Chinese community in Victoria. Then in the late 1890s, he came across to Western Australia and started a business here in Perth. He was the first president of the Chung Society here in 1910. And from my understanding, he felt that there was a need for a meeting place for the many Chinese who were in this area of Perth.
Louis Wah's surname was Louis. His son and grandson went by the surname of Tak. And Doug, Louis Wah's great-grandson, goes by the name of Fong. It's confusing, but many Chinese families have quite different names to their original. This was due to the early misinterpretation and misunderstanding by our local authorities, and possibly because traditionally Chinese say their surname first, followed by their given names.
Surname comes first. Why? Because for Chinese people, and like most Asian people, family and community is more important than self. And this is, I think, a really beautiful part of Chinese culture.
So we've been in residence of Broome virtually back from 1947 onwards. We still have family there, and I consider that to be my family home. We've tried to maintain our Chinese culture in Broome. We eat lots of Chinese food. All our children can use chopsticks, and they are quite proud of their Chinese connection.
Norman Harry Shin is one of 350 Shin descendants, but his ancestry was kept from him for many years. When his inherent connection to China began to emerge, his mother, a very proper English woman, felt compelled to disclose his Chinese heritage.
We didn't know our origin because it was all hush-hush, but I'm the family historian and I wanted to research. With the name that we had, I knew there was something different about us. And I discovered that my great-grandfather was Chung Shin, who had come from Guangdong. It was a period in the 1850s and 60s where Chinese came out of China, the reason being that China was going through a very difficult time with poverty.
Norman's interest in China continued to grow. His great wish was to visit the country of his ancestors, but financially it seemed unlikely. That was until a work colleague of Norman's provided an opportunity for he and his wife to visit China, and so began a journey of ancestral discovery.
And she said, "Norm, you can come to China. I'll stand right beside you and we'll look after you." So I worked a second job on weekends, and we saved and we went in 1993. Never have been to Singapore, never had been into Asia. So this was a huge step out for us. And so we arrived in Beijing. I was overwhelmed, first of all, but when we were driving through the streets, my emotions were so churned up. I realized that I'm coming back to a land of my ancestry.
Since his first trip to China, Norman has been back a further 7 times. His interest and love of the country and its people has led him to write a book about the journey of the Shin family. Its imminent publication is receiving much attention. The sharing of stories like Norman Harry Shin, Doug Fong's and Kaylene Poon's is so important as they provide a richly documented account of what life was like for our early migrant Chinese and of the huge impact and influence they have had on our society.
My family grew up in Northbridge. They moved to Northbridge in the 1920s. And my dad, who's still alive, he's 92, tells me that even before he moved into Northbridge in 1927, the Chung was in place in Northbridge. It's been a long association. It's been a huge impact to our community. The Western Australian lifestyle is better because of so many people coming here, and the contribution of our Chinese community is second to none.
There are many stories that remain untold, and so on Chunghwa Focus next week, we will continue to explore the Chinese who have not only made Western Australia their home, but have also, through their contribution, helped make this a far greater state.